Our focus of the exhibition is on 1924, but it actually starts well beyond then. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian was unparalleled in the efforts of spreading Islam to the West. Islamic efforts in the West were minimal at that time. What he did was unprecedented. The things that we could pick up on include things like writing to the Queen. He wrote to the Theosophist in America, a journal. In fact, it was from there where people became Muslim. He challenged people who claimed to be the Messiah in the Western world. Aside from writing to the Queen, aside from writing to politicians, he was writing to the average man. He was published in newspapers. His books were serialized later. He made every single effort to spread the message of Islam to the Western world. Now, we must remember, in the Western world at that time, although Islam existed, it was not there as a propagationary measure. By which I mean, Islam was not being propagated purely for the purpose of its religion. It was being used in matrimonial alliances. It was being used for countries to forge relationships with one another. The Ahmadi movement, from what I can see, was the first endeavor to bring Islam to the West purely for the purposes of religion. After Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian died, soon his place would be taken by another leader of the community. That would be Maulana Hakim Nuruddin. He had been a companion of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. Now, this individual was a physician. He took the reins and leadership of the community. He continued that same mission. Although there was some dissension and difficulty within the community at that time, he continued spreading the message westward. This was all seen by the community as a fulfillment of the sun rising in the west. The things to really pick up with him are the efforts that he made in Woking. It was his explanatory notes from which the first mass translation of the Quran was produced in 1917. He was in fact behind sending the first missionary of Islam to the Western world, Jodhar Fateh Sial, to England in 1913. He instructed Khwaja Kamaluddin, a lawyer, to investigate the defunct Shah Jahan Mosque. Very quickly, in 1912, in 1913, and 1914, a mosque was activated. Bear in mind, at that time, people like Quilliam, who had established the Liverpool mission, people like Leitner, who had established the Woking mission, their mosque became defunct in their own lifetime. These efforts were revitalized by Maulana Hakim Nuruddin. Soon, though, however, discord was to rear its head again. At the death of the first Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya movement, then came the second Khalifa. This was a source of discord for some believers. They then separated and the Woking Mosque became a separate mission. What was this young man, Jodhar Fateh Sial, to do? He had been sent to propagate Islam in the Western world. He then relocated to London. Now bear in mind, there was already a London Mosque Fund that had been established in 1910. However, despite the thousands and thousands of pounds in the coffers of the Emir of Kabul, Afghanistan, Turkey, they were not able to use those funds to generate a mosque. It would actually be Fateh Sial who bought land in London that would become the first mosque in London. He was able to negotiate where every other organization or individual was not. He thus becomes the first missionary of Islam to the Western world, and he led an incredible life with some incredible achievements. Now, going beyond that, we actually come to 1924. The London mission was up and running. One of the missionaries here, Maulana Abdurrahim Nayar, he found out about a conference that was to occur. It was being launched by those at SOAS. He went to those organizers and he asked, can we get more representation from the Ahmadi Muslim community? The answer was affirmative. The second Khalifa of the Ahmadi Muslim community took it to his people, and they affirmatively answered, yes, you can leave. Soon a tour of 4 months and 12 days would begin. The first stop would be the Arab world. Bear in mind, in 1924, he spoke with Palestinians, he spoke with prominent Muslim leaders in the Arab world. He said the confidence in Muslim leaders will ultimately lead to their downfall. He warned of Zionist plans. However, that message was not heeded. In fact, this message would be reiterated again in 1939 when Maulana Shams spoke about Palestine and the Palestinian rights in the London Mosque. Again, the message was not heeded. Landing in England, he had a full itinerary ahead of him. It was being coordinated by several of his companions that had come with him. Whilst he was here, his itinerary was jam-packed. He spent several weeks going to places like Portsmouth, London, Brighton. He prayed for the Muslim soldiers of England that had died fighting for what was now their country. He delivered an address to the Conservative Party, and of course, he came for the Conference of Living Religions. His speech was met with great accord. In fact, there was a long ovation afterwards. It did also become a book too. Now, bear in mind, he was also here to internalize the efforts of the Ahmadi Muslim community. The things that he did have laid the foundation stone for the community, quite literally, for the next 100 years. He informed the missionaries and gave them guidance as to how to act whilst the London mission was up and running. He laid the foundation stone of the London Mosque, which would soon become the centre of Islam in England, once again with the Ahmadi Muslim mission leading the way. Aside from this, he also held the first Majlis Ashura. He also moved the Review of Religions, the religious magazine, to England. Soon his time was up and he was to leave. From here, he ventured to Paris. He prayed in the Grand Mosque of Paris. He would soon return and venture back to Qadian. 4 months and 12 days had truly elapsed. In this exhibition, what we've covered is the Islamic Renaissance. There are a few key points to take away as you cover the tour highlights with me. The Ahmadi Muslim community, from what I can see, becomes the first missionary movement of Islam to the Western world. Whilst Islam was in somewhat of a dilapidated state in the Western world, the Ahmadi Muslim movement saw this, sent missionaries, activated mosques, generated mosques, bought mosques, sent missionaries up and down across the country, and they did so for the next 100 years. It truly was an Islamic Renaissance.